Hey, thanks everybody for being here for one of our Karate Built podcasts. I'm happy to have, as our usual, Mr. Dwayne Flees, 4th-degree black belt from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Thanks for being here, sir.
Thank you, sir.
And Senior Master Laura Sanborn, 7th-degree black belt from Cave Creek. Thanks for being here, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
And we're going to be talking about our KarateBuilt Charter. That's a very important piece of our martial arts school. We'll talk about that today, all the pieces of our charter and what it means. And this is a little bit about me. You can read that at your leisure. What we're going to talk about today, as I said, is the KarateBuilt Charter. And KarateBuilt Charter is something that defines what our actions are every day. It defines what we do. It defines who we are, and it defines how we operate. So let me read it out, and you can see it here. KarateBuilt is a highly disciplined martial arts school. We measure results based not on who we exclude, but on students' constant growth from the moment they start to black belt and beyond. KarateBuilt black belts take responsibility to lead with integrity. So there's 3 different statements, and we're going to talk about all 3 of these today. So let's start with the first one. KarateBuilt's a highly disciplined martial arts school, and I'll start out, guys, and then I'd love for you guys to add in your comments on this as well. So discipline is very important for us, and for those of you who don't know this, that a lot of our instructors will be watching this, or maybe instructors that aren't at KarateBuilt Martial Arts. But when we teach class, the first thing we worry about is discipline. A lot of times when a class is taught, we think about the class in terms of the curriculum that we're going to teach. So we think about, if we draw a pyramid here, and the final result is the knowledge in the class. So the knowledge or the curriculum, what are we going to teach? That really is the last thing we worry about. The first thing we're going to worry about is discipline. And last time we actually did a podcast on motivation. But the first thing we worry about, the first thing that we're making sure happens in class, and the cornerstone of what we do in our instructor training program, is having discipline. And it's not just making sure that the class is following our directions, but everybody understands all the rules, that respect and focus is part of it, and that people are committed to the goals that we set, and the goals are to black belt and beyond. So we start with, and the first sentence of our charter is that we're a highly disciplined martial arts school. And we notice this because some of our students might go, some of our instructors might go to another martial arts school, or even to their elementary school, or even to another sports activity, and they notice that it's completely different from what we do at KarateBuilt Martial Arts. It's not the same. We have a marked difference in how they're learning at KarateBuilt Martial Arts versus anything else that they do. It's much more disciplined. It also happens to be, as a result, much more fun. Guys, why don't you take it from here a little bit, and what a highly disciplined martial arts school means to you. I'll try to give you a little warm up before as I drop it in your lap.
It starts with an expectation. We expect them to be disciplined all the time when they're in a school. Even if they're sitting and watching a class with their parents, they're not up and running around. They're not doing it. And we set that expectation from the minute they come in. We bow to them, showing them that we're different from other places. It's not just, hi, how are you? It's hello, sir, with a bow to invite them in. But that shows that we have discipline automatically. And then they bow back. And then we start with the yes, sirs and the yes, ma'ams. So it's always an expectation that they're going to follow these rules that we demonstrate as well as tell them about.
Mr. Flees, what were your thoughts on this?
Yes, sir. I was thinking more of along the lines of the discipline that the instructors have to show in relation to the students as well, like Senior Master Sanborn was saying. But the instructor's expectation of how we should behave, or how we should be treating the students during class, or on or off the mat, we have to have the same same or better level of discipline than even the students do.
Yeah, you know, I was thinking as you guys said that is the expectations we set are for the students, for the instructors, for the parents.
Parents.
Oh, yeah.
And students, we mention kids a lot, but it's absolutely not just about kids. We expect the adult students, the teenage students, the adult students. It doesn't matter if they're 80 years old. They still show the same discipline to a 30-year-old instructor that we have. And we expect that. There's no, you know, if you're the grandfather, your great grandfather, you still need to respect the other students. And by the way, respect the 6-year-old that's in class and treat them the same way as you would anybody else. There's not many other environments that we have that expectation. And if the 6-year-old gets treated that way, then the 6-year-old's going to start learning to treat everybody else that way. There's kind of a misconception, I think, sometimes that kids should treat adults a certain way, and we definitely want the kids to treat adults a certain way with respect. But we actually want to, how's that going to ever happen if the adults don't expect to treat the kids that way too? If kids get treated like they're little kids and get treated when we talk to them, we go, oh, hey, how you doing? And we have a tone that's not disciplined. That's not a disciplined tone. And we talk like Barney in the class. And some people, Barney's not a show anymore, I guess. But for those of you who remember that, if we talk like Barney or we talk like the tone is like Romper Room, then they're going to expect to behave like Romper Room, and they're not going to show that back to us. So it's a weird disconnect if we don't have discipline in both directions. And at other places, not just martial arts schools, but other environments, if somebody's a 3, 4, 5, and 6-year-old, they might expect them to run around and be silly. We don't expect that. So, you know, in our environment, we start kids at 3 years old, and we have very disciplined 3-year-olds. Some kids maybe not, we don't accept, maybe they're not ready at 3. But for everybody we accept, we expect excellent discipline, as you said, Senior Master. We expect them to behave, and we have high expectations, even if they have ADHD. We just did a seminar on that with our staff. If they have if they have ADHD, if they have autism, if they have other special needs, we expect them to have discipline. Other thoughts on that as we move on?
Well, part of it is we post those rules and expectations. They're not just, we demonstrate them and we tell them from the very first day some of the rules, some of the expectations, but then we post them so there's no question that we have these expectations. They're in front of you. We put them right there where you can see them when you're sitting and watching class. We expect parents to put their phones down. We expect the kids that when they're not in class to be sitting still and waiting for class to start without being rowdy. We don't provide toys for them to play with because that's not what we want them to be doing. They are expected to be sitting quietly and being prepared for their class. So we want to make sure that those expectations are laid out in every format that we can use to make it obvious to them.
I had a experience where I went to a martial arts school and they asked me to come teach. And in the area where the parents were waiting, there were games and toys and things like that. And I said, well, why are these here? And they said, well, because before class, you know, the kids need to keep busy. And maybe after class, they're waiting for their parents and the kids need to keep busy. And sure enough, when I was watching class and observing, guess what was happening? There's lots of noise and the kids were being silly and they were running around. It was messy. Afterwards, the instructors had to clean up the area because maybe there was some drinks spilled. And I promise that one of you guys or one of our instructors, if they went to that school, they would be freaked out. They would not know what to do with themselves because we never see that because we don't have those kind of things and the kids wait. And what can they do instead of that? Well, they can read a book. They can just wait. They can be on time instead of being, you know, dropped off and be 20 minutes early. Like they need to learn for their later skills in life. This is the way it works in life. I mean, you don't go to your meet your doctor and then expect to be running around in the doctor's office like crazy. That wouldn't really be right. Or you wouldn't go to I don't know, if you're an adult and you go to meet somebody for a job interview and you're 20 minutes early, you don't, play your video game on your phone really loud so that, just because you need to be entertained. And we think that there's a disconnect there, but there's not. We expect the same with our adult students. If they're sitting there, they need to be quiet or talking quietly or participating in the class or helping. So that's a different thing. The other thing you said was from day one, and part of we have a special introductory lesson when somebody joins, and it's not just so they learn about us, it's so we teach them how things go. And one of the very first things they learn is that we not only have manners, but show them. And we do that by saying yes, sir, and yes, ma'am, not just to the instructors at the school, but our parents at home and teachers at school, if it's a kid. If it was an adult, we'd say we not only have manners, but show them. And we do that by saying yes, sir, and yes, ma'am, to our instructors at school and other people outside of our school. Can you do that for me? And then we expect both the adults and the kids to say yes, sir, or yes, ma'am. That we teach them that is they're 4 feet in the school when they learn that. They don't get to participate in what we do unless they're going to participate in that activity as well. Other things to add, guys?
Well, if we're doing a kids lesson, we have the parents do it as well. So that the kids see that it happens, not just, oh, it's not because you're 5 years old, you have to do this. Everybody does this. The expectation is that everybody has this discipline. The parents put their phones down and pay attention to the class. They're not on the phone sitting in the parent area being noisy and making calls. Everybody in the school has a disciplined behavior that they're supposed to follow while they're in the school.
Yeah, and Mr. Flees, did you want to add anything to that as we?
No, sir, that was,
She was perfect.
yeah.
Well,
I can live with that.
one thing I want to emphasize too, when you do all that, the next layer up is motivation, and this equals fun. And you can't really have fun unless this is established first. And I would have everybody that's listening think about discipline is a requirement for fun. If you had a game you're playing, whether any sport you might play or a video game or like for kids or for something that you do that's fun, and imagine that you took all the rules away and there was no discipline or there are no referees. If you're playing a basketball game and now there's no referees, you might think for a minute, well, that'd be fun. You could do whatever you wanted. Well, it'd be fun except for when the other guy did whatever he wanted to, or she did whatever she wanted, and then it was chaos and anarchy. The reason things become fun is because there's some rules. Disneyland happens to be really fun. There's a lot of rules at Disneyland. I mean, you have to go through the gate. You have to follow the rules of when they start and close. You have to wait in line. You can't just skip in line. I mean, if they didn't have that, and nobody wants to wait in line, you'd rather skip the line, but there's ways to skip the line, but you have to follow the rules about that. All of those things are a discipline structure. And if there's no discipline, there's not much fun. All things that have a lot of fun usually come with a lot of discipline. And the exceptions that are usually ones that are bad habits. The exception of the one, overeating or people doing stuff that's not good for them. Those are ones that end up having long-term. But short-term things, maybe, but long-term things that are fun always have some discipline and structure. So nothing that we're saying doesn't equal fun in the end. So you have to have discipline to be able to move up to having fun. So when we teach instructors, that's why this is the first part of our charter. Discipline is what everything starts with, and then we can have motivation in class and help them with their emotions and having fun. And then the next part's going to be knowledge, which isn't part of that's part of what we're teaching, but we start with discipline. Okay. Anything to add before we move on to the next line of our charter?
No, sir.
Excellent. Okay, guys. So the next piece that we want to talk about is the next line, which is we measure results based not on who we exclude, but on students' constant growth from the moment they start to black belt and beyond. So my statement here is a couple pieces. The first part about it is very specific meaning of not who we exclude. So this doesn't mean that we let everybody train to black belt at all. for people to train to black belt, they have to be accepted, which means they have to be coming to class. Their parents have to support them, or as adult students, they have to be, they have to, have support of their environment. If they have a family members or anything else, then they have to have a really good martial arts attitude. They also have to be somebody that the instructors meet and accept. They have to be accepted into black belt training. But the meaning is that our instructors are committed to helping as many students as possible reach this level. And we have students that we've had students in our environment that have had missing arms, or that have special needs. We just did a big podcast series on kids and adults with different disabilities or special needs, temporary or permanent. We've got a 4-part series on that, about how we work with people in different situations. So we are committed to helping as many students as possible be accepted. And then the second part is what they do next. But our goal is not to exclude, but to enable them to be successful. So we're taking responsibility for that. That doesn't mean that the students don't have a job here. And if the students, and for kids, for their parents, don't work hard to be accepted, then they won't make it. But our job is not, our results are measured on, not on who we exclude and try to keep away because maybe they're not talented like a lot of other sports, or maybe they're not, they don't have a lot of ability level like a lot of other sports. That's what happens with a lot of other sports, is if they're not talented or have ability level, they don't get rewarded. They don't get chosen to be in the starting lineup. They don't get chosen to be in the special teams. That's not what we're doing at KarateBuilt Martial Arts. So we're not measuring ourselves based on who we exclude. What are your thoughts on that, guys?
Yeah.
Want people to qualify for it. Like you said, and the growth is part of that qualification. One of the first things we ask parents when they come in is, what are you looking for from us? And those are the things we want to focus on, that they have growth in, is that they qualify by having this growth. If we have someone who isn't ready because they haven't had any growth yet, they haven't shown us any type of discipline and stuff in class, then they're going to be either delayed, or they may never get there because they didn't qualify. But we're going to continue to try to help them get there from the very beginning.
Yeah, it's our job to work with them to get them there.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Mr. Flees?
I think for us, just accepting people with different abilities, like we talked about, the people with challenges or missing limbs, or they have walkers. One of our adult students came, she said she went to 3 or 4 different other schools, but because she had a service dog, they wouldn't let her come into the school because of her service dog, which he turned out to be great. He'd go in his corner and lay down and wouldn't get up unless she needed him. So it wasn't a big deal, and everyone learned to accept that in the school.
Well,
So,
and I think in that case, that service dog was, because I know that particular case, it was basically a requirement for her to function. She wouldn't have been able to function without the dog. It wasn't like a service dog where the dog could have been left at home and she could have gone there. She had to have the dog, or she couldn't have been able to get to the school, function in the school, and everything, right?
right, yeah.
So yeah, that's a good example. So that's about being inclusive and trying to understand what people need so that we can help them get to black belt and beyond, not with well, that's a problem. Well, that's a problem. Well, that's a problem. So you need to solve your own problems before you come to us.
Yeah, that's right, and that's one that's not going to go away.
Right. Sometimes things are sometimes these are permanent, or sometimes things are temporary, and we help them work through whichever one those are.
Yes.
And those are the students sometimes that when they get their black belt or they get their second degree black belt, because our goal for everybody is at least to get to second degree black belt. That's kind of a minimum goal for us. That's the most exciting. It's not that everybody isn't amazing when they achieve that goal, but that might have been a harder challenge for them when they get there. Which kind of leads us to the second part of the that was the first part. The second part of it is students' constant growth. And this reminds me of, you know, what you just said is that everybody's different when they come in, and they may be different ages or different ability levels or different anything. And what we're measuring ourselves on is that they're growing all the time and they're getting to a higher level. So somebody could be starting with us. We've had students start with us in their 70s. One recently, in fact, that started in their 70s and got their black belt recently. And they're not going to be able to do the same thing as a 16-year-old. But the growth that they've made, when we look at from where they started to where they got to, we have to be able to measure that as how much growth they had, not based on how high they kicked or how hard they hit or how flexible they are. They're not gonna be as flexible as a 16-year-old. However, the growth was what we're measuring, and how much that they continue to grow for one thing, and how much they grew from where they started at. Anything else you guys want to say about that?
As instructors, we meet to find out what we need, what our expectations of the kids are and the students, all the students actually, every month, constantly. Where are they now? What's the next step for them? Where do they need to be? What are they working on? Are there any issues we need to be addressing with them? So we're measuring that growth constantly. It's not a start here on this and then a year later we're like, oh, you're better at this. It's happening just all the time. And we're talking about it as instructors all the time. And for ourselves, where are we? What's the next step for us? Where are we going to be in a year? What are you working on? What can we do to help you get better as an instructor? And then, so it's pervasive in the school that everybody is watched for growth, not just the students, but the students and the instructors.
That's right. That's a good point. And our expectation is the parents' expectation sometimes is very low. They may not have a high expectation if their kid has a disability or there's some kind of issue. Their expectation for their kid might be low, and our job then is to help them understand. No, we can have very high expectations for your kid. It may not be in certain areas. It may not be in this area. It may be in this area, or it may be in another area. We need to help them pay attention to what areas they're going to grow. But I think what you said is really important. All the instructors are setting their goals for growth and their next rank, but what that means to them. And their growth isn't just black belt, but what black belt means. It's not just a belt on their uniform. It's going to be that it has to do with them developing the skills to speak in public, to be stronger, be physically more fit, and if it's 70-year-old, him being physically more fit or she being physically more fit is going to be, priceless. Not that it isn't, it's a 16-year-old, but their growth is going to be different. That priceless growth is going to be different than the 16-year-old's physical fitness. We would expect maybe a higher level of fitness growth than the 70-year-olds, but it's just as important. And their level of self-confidence and their level of self-discipline needs to improve, so that for our child students, when they're adults, they're going to be able to be capable. Because our goal isn't, ever, especially for our parents, they got to understand that our goal isn't for them to push their kids, but it's for them to teach their kids to learn to push themselves. The parents don't understand sometimes that this constant growth is always going to have a time where, when their kids are going to grow, they're going to come up against a time when it's important that they're going to want to push back and go, oh, I don't feel like it. And that's the time that's the most important in a child's life. And for adults, hopefully we've got the skills to push through that. Parents have to help kids learn the skill to push themselves. Not push their kids, but learn the skill so the kids can push themselves through those times. It feels a lot like pushing them, but if they don't learn the skill to push themselves now when they're kids, they'll never learn it later. And that's why what we do is so important. So the fourth one is learn the skills, I think, to push themselves. I think that was really important. And I thought the fifth one was, is our goal is at least second degree black belt, is the minimum goal that we have. So they train as a black belt for a certain amount of time. Otherwise, they're not really fulfilling training as a black belt. Other things for you guys to add here? Nope. Okay. One thing I wanted to mention here, that there were 4 kinds of kids activities that we had talked about. 4 kids levels of growth, rather, or levels of support, of training, I guess. 4 kids levels of training. The first level comes from parents. So we're really focused on kids at this moment. Parents is the first level of training, and that's going to be where it's the most important level. It's going to be when they get fundamental love and support and their basic needs and much of their basic education. I mean, that's the most important level of kids training, comes from parents. The second level is going to be from school. I mean, that's critical for functioning in today's society. You got to learn how to read and do math, and in today's day and age, learn to work the computer and things like that. Number 3 are going to be fun and interesting activities. And that's like art and sports and musical things, and all those are really great. The only problem is they tend to be temporary. You do them for 6 weeks or so, and then you quit. And they tend to reward excellence and talent. And they give most attention to talented individuals. Like if you're first string in football, you get to play a lot. And if you're sitting on the bench, you sit on the bench the whole time. Or if you're a great artist, you get praised. And if your art looks like mine, you would probably not be praised very much. Or musically, if you're really good or it comes naturally to you, you're going to get positive feedback from the music teacher. But if you're not very good, it's a frustrating experience. But the fourth one is going to be personal development. And that's what Abraham Maslow, from Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that some people may have heard of, called self-actualization. And this is regardless of your talent or ability level. Doesn't matter how good or bad you are at something. Doesn't matter whether you're started out with any skills. You can build yourself, build your person. That's what personal development is. And that's what KarateBuilt Martial Arts is about, is personal development. So we're this 4th level. And that's what this whole thing is about, is we're going to measure our results based not on who we exclude. We're going to try to get everybody accepted. We're going to work on getting everybody accepted into black belt training, because you need to train to black belt to get real growth. And then we're going to measure based on constant growth on their way to first and then second degree black belt. And that's what personal development is. So this is what KarateBuilt Martial Arts is. And parents, you guys are the most important thing for our kids' students. If you're an adult, you've already gotten that well established by your parents. School is very important and critical, but it's not everything. It's kind of the minimum level. And we don't want to confuse these fun and interesting activities with personal development, like what we're doing. These are things you have to do, and they're going to have some of these challenges where you do for quite a long time. And when right at the point where you're challenged, you're going to feel some adversity. You're going to feel some pushback. For parents, you have to understand that's when it's the time to help your kids through it. Okay. So this is the second part of our charter. Anything else to add before we move on to the last part?
Well, part of it is we support them outside of here as well. We support the parents in the growth they want for their kids, the personal development. We support the kids through their school we'll do show and tells in the school with their teachers. We let the teachers know they are a student at KarateBuilt, and the school should have the expectations that they are better behaved and pay attention. So we want the same things to follow outside of not just in the karate school, but outside of it as well.
That's a great point. That's a great point. So during this time, we're helping the parents through this. So the last thing is, the last part of the charter, it has to do with when they're black belts. And KarateBuilt black belts take responsibility to lead with integrity. So the first part was where we start. We start with discipline. The second part is how we get you to black belt. And the third part is that we take responsibility once you're a black belt, that we expect you to take responsibility to lead with integrity. And I don't know if we have a black belt pin. I actually have one of my black belt pins right here. So this is one of our black belt pins. And when you become a black belt, you get a black belt pin. And when you become a first degree, and that's to be worn not on your uniform, but when you're outside on other clothing, representing that you're a black belt in other parts of your life. And whether you're wearing that or not, or maybe you're working out and you're not wearing that pin, we want to represent being a black belt everywhere, all the time. One of the phrases that we use is that sometimes people hear the wrong way is use your karate with everybody. Use your karate on everybody. Sometimes people are, oh no, you might be, does that mean you're going to punch people? Does that mean you're going to hit people? Well, no. What do we just talk about? Is karate is showing respect for people, being disciplined. In fact, that's what it starts with. So we're going to be using karate everywhere. Should you use your karate on your teacher? The answer is yes. All the time. Because we should be saying yes, sir, or yes, ma'am to our teacher. We should be listening to our teacher. We should be disciplined in class. When would we use fighting skills? Well, when we're in danger of serious injury or death. In fact, we learned that on day one. During that introductory lesson, we're going to learn when that is. Very first day that you take class. So we're using karate everywhere, with everyone, on everyone, all the time. And the black belt pin represents that. And we expect that when you're a black belt, you're not only acting that way, which we'd expect all students to act with this kind of with this karate attitude with everybody, but black belts would also help other people act that way. So they take responsibility on their own, doesn't matter if they're a kid, but our adults especially, to do these things and to lead other people's. Now, with integrity, doesn't just mean that one kind of skill. Integrity means all the different life skills we have, which include this is our curriculum for life skills, which includes discipline, which includes having a vision, includes communicating well with people, includes having honesty, includes building great self-esteem and understanding that so you build it for yourself, and showing respect for people. So we have 6 major life skills that we work on that are the life skills of leaders. We've been training people on this. When they get to their black belt, they've been with us at least 3 years. Sometimes people have been with us 5 years, especially if they started at 3 years old, or 5 or 6 years. And so that word integrity covers all these different life skills that we've been teaching them. And we teach them again and again and again and again and again and again for that whole time. And then once they're black belts, we keep teaching it again and again and again and again. So we expect them to conduct themselves that way in everything that they do. So that's the expectation inside the school, outside the school, in the community, and as role models with everybody else that they interact with, to help them act that way, whether they're martial arts students or not. Guys, what would you guys add to that?
Again, it's back to expectations that they're going to show this integrity outside, that people can recognize it, that our kids stand apart from other kids because it's obvious that they have these behaviors and expectation in the responsibility and integrity. We want their teachers to be able to see it. We want other students to be able to see they act a little bit differently. They're not wild and crazy and getting into trouble all the time. They are responsible for what they do. They bring their homework to school because they're supposed to. They do their things that they're supposed to do. All of those things where they are an example for the other people around them.
Well, so our pin represents that they can wear, and we want you to wear this. Like, for example, I wear this on my dress suit that I wear. It doesn't matter if it's a martial arts function. Their pin they can wear, but whether they're wearing the pin or not, they would still represent themselves as if they were wearing their pin. So that's the idea behind leading with integrity and take responsibility. That means they do it on their own to lead with integrity.
Sure.
Yeah, good. Well, so that one's pretty straightforward. I think as we come back to these, as we look through all of these and come back to the main charter, all three of these statements, we're a highly disciplined martial arts school. We measure results based not on who we exclude, but on our students' constant growth from the moment they start to black belt and beyond. And KarateBuilt black belts take responsibility to lead with integrity. That's our charter. And we've gone through what each of these statements mean. And this governs everything we do in the school, what we do from the moment, hopefully we've described this, from the moment a student walks in, the behaviors that our instructors portray, everything they do, all the way from training to all of what the students do, the parents do, the instructors do, all the way to black belt, and how people act once they're black belts, and all the way to becoming masters and instructors. These are the words that govern what we do, and these are hanging on our wall, and we can look at them and point to them, and we'll know exactly where we are according to our charter. Anything else to add, guys? Nope. Okay, so these are our KarateBuilt values. And thank you very much, everybody, for being here at our podcast. Appreciate especially Mr. Flees and Senior Master Sanborn for being here as always. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a great day.
All right,
Thank you,
thanks, sir.
sir.